In this video, I'm going to show you how I turn this into this. This is a side-by-side poison dart frog enclosure made by BlackBox cages. First, I had to cut out some screen and attach it to the vent so the fruit flies won't escape when I'm feeding the dart frogs. Then I repeated this process on the other side. I got some pink styrofoam sheets from Home Depot, and I'm going to use those for part of the background. Here I'm just marking a line to cut so the background fits perfectly inside the enclosure. Then I'm just making sure it fits perfectly. I have to make sure to cut part of the background out for the ventilation. Just punching the background a little bit to give it some texture. And I'm scratching up the back of the background so it's easier to adhere to the side of the enclosure. I'm just laying some silicone beads onto the background, then I'm going to press it to the side of the enclosure. Next, I'm going to repeat this process with the rest of the background. And also doing the same exact thing on the other side of this double enclosure. Now I move the enclosure off the table and onto its back. I put some silicone on this universal rock and I'm going to stick it to the side of the background. And I'm also going to add some cork bark. I'm using a thumbtack to stick these little planter cups into the background. I have some assorted bromeliads that will be going into these cups. Alright, time to head back to the other enclosure. This background I'm going to make little rocky ledges, so I'm just ripping out pieces of the foam to make it look more rock-like. And I'm using this little stick to press it into the background so it stays put before I attach it with some foam. Then I added a few more ledges. Next, I also added planter cups to this enclosure. I went to my local Lowe's and picked up some of this pond spray foam. This enclosure on the right is going to be a cocoa fiber background, so I'm going to add quite a bit of foam to it. Also, I foamed in the little planter cups. In the other enclosure, I just used foam around the rock ledges. I'm using this hot wire cutter to cut the foam to make it look like rock. Then I put this rotary tool to use to give the flat parts of the foam more texture. Then I use the steak knife to really chop big chunks out of the back part of the background. There you have it. Looks much more rock-like than it did before. Okay, we're back to the enclosure on the right. I'm just using my hand to rip off pieces of the styrofoam to give it more of a smooth surface for the silicone. Now I'm going to glob some silicone all over the back part of the background. Then I'm using my fingers to spread the silicone all over the background. You want this thing 100% completely covered with the silicone. Then it's time to start chucking the cocoa fiber all over it. And then I use my hand to pat down the cocoa fiber into the silicone. Then I repeated this process on the rest of the background. Alright, let's give that some time to dry and start working on the enclosure to the left. Here I have some dry lock, and then I have some acrylic black paint. I'm going to mix it up to try to give it like a dark gray look. Then I painted it all over the background. I only used 2 coats for this enclosure. It's about a week later and everything's dry. This awesome company out of Canada called Mossify sent me some moss for this build. We're back to the enclosure on the right, and I'm using some aquarium superglue to stick the moss to the background. Then I swung back to the enclosure on the left to add some moss as well. I moved the enclosure from the workbench to its place in the reptile room to finish the build. Now I'm just cleaning up the enclosures and getting all the excess cocoa fiber out and all the debris. The next step is to add these clay balls, which are the drainage layer. Then I cover the clay balls with a screen to prevent the substrate from falling down into it. Then I repeated this process on the other enclosure. Now it's time to add the substrate. I'm using ABG mix, and I'm going to add a little extra cocoa fiber to it also. Alright, it's time to start throwing in the plants. I got these plants at Home Depot. I forgot what they're called, but I looked them up and it said they're dart frog safe. Then I'm going to add a bunch of assorted bromeliads. Throwing in another universal rock. And adding some cork bark. After that, I added the leaf litter. Next, I added some damp sphagnum moss. I put it all around the plants to keep them hydrated, and it also helps hide the little planting cups. I got some more moss for the forest floor to give the dart frogs multiple surfaces to hop on. So far, I think it's turning out pretty nice. I'm going to spray the substrate down to get it nice and damp. Now I'm going to go catch my poison dart frogs and get them ready to move in to their new enclosures. I'll put these guys here for now. I'm going to get their favorite hides from their old enclosure to give them a little comfort. Now it's time to catch my other 2 poison dart frogs. I'll put you guys right here for now. Let me go get one of your old plants and old rocks. Gotta give this plant a little haircut. I'm also going to add a branch to each enclosure to give the dart frogs additional things to climb on. Let's remove the protective paper. Adding these rocks in here also because they look just like the background I made. Can't forget the water dishes. Okay, first, on the left-hand enclosure, we're going to release my El Cope poison dart frogs. Scientific name is Dendrobates auratus. They have so much more room for activities. I'm really excited for these guys. Now it's time to release these poison dart frogs on the right side enclosure. The all blue one is called an Azurius, and the greenish yellowish blue one is called a green Sipilowini. Their scientific name is Dendrobates tinctorius. For some reason they didn't want to come out of this deli cup, so I had to help them out myself. The green Sipilowini started exploring right off the bat. I'm going to give all these dart frogs a little snack. Now let's feed the El Cope poison dart frogs. Okay, here is the finished product, which is what I like to call the Dart Frog Duplex, made by BlackBox Cages. I really enjoyed setting up these enclosures, and I wanted each one to look very different, and I think I accomplished that. And here's the final touch, my childhood frog collection. Thank you for watching Tommy's Reptiles.